Welcome to episode 53 of FBI Retired Case File Review with Jerry Williams. I'm a retired agent writing crime fiction inspired by actual FBI cases. In this episode, we speak with retired agent Denise Miner, who served in the FBI for nearly 29 years. She's interviewed about her extensive investigative experience working overseas, primarily in various countries in Africa and in the United States, utilizing her French language skills to communicate, interpret, and translate. In addition to serving as the legat, or legal attaché, in Rabat, Morocco, Miner was the French interpreter for the Protocol Office in support of former FBI Director Louis Freeh and other FBI executives. She was deployed to Nairobi, Kenya, to lead a small team with French language skills to conduct terrorism investigations in the Federal Islamic Republic of the Comoros Islands. She was deployed to Rwanda to investigate human rights violations and genocide, and had numerous other assignments that took her to Yemen, Haiti, and other French-speaking destinations around the world. Her stateside assignments included leading a team of crime analysts at the Behavioral Analysis Unit, BAU, Violent Criminal Apprehension Program, and serving as a Leadership Development Program facilitator on the FBI's Leadership Learning Delivery Team. After retiring from the FBI, Miner, a licensed attorney and certified personal coach, opened her own leadership development consulting firm, Mindspring Metro DC Incorporated. I hope you enjoyed this interview as much as I did. Denise and I did not know each other. We did not have the opportunity to meet during our careers, but we had so much in common, which you'll hear about as you listen to the interview. Even with our similar backgrounds, you can see how our careers took us in totally different directions, which speaks directly about the opportunities available to those who join the FBI. Denise Miner used her language skills to shape her career, but language skills can also be utilized by non-agent positions. And so in this episode's show notes, I have a link to the FBI's overview of positions as language analyst and contract linguist. Before we get to that interview, I just want to let you know my crime novel, Pay to Play, about a female FBI agent investigating crime in the Philadelphia strip club industry, is getting closer and closer to that magical 50 reviews. I think I mentioned to you last week that the rumor is Amazon will start to promote your book more once you get past 50 reviews. So I'm getting close. I got a review today from Lynn, and she says, Pay to Play is a powerfully written crime novel that intensifies as you dig deeper into each chapter, a roller coaster ride with plenty of twists and turns that leaves you yearning for more. Thanks, Lynn. I want to thank those who have purchased Pay to Play and to give my crime novel a review on Amazon. It has a 4.8 out of 5-star rating, and I certainly appreciate your support. My expenses and time are supported by those of you who have purchased Pay to Play to defray the cost of this weekly podcast. As you can tell from the reviews, it's a great read. Speaking about great reads, I do have a crime fiction recommendation this week, and I'll talk to you more about that at the end of the interview. Now here's the show. I want to welcome my guest, Denise Miner. Hi, Denise.
Hi, Jerry. Thank you for having me on your program.
So excited to talk to you. We kind of have a similar background, but before we get to that, I want to let everybody know that you have a skill that really seemed to help direct your career in ways and places that most agents would not be able to go, be able to do.
My passion is that French language, and I've just been studying it since I first started taking French, one course in the 8th grade. And so I've just been studying it ever since then. I watch, French TV, I read French books and magazines, and anytime I have an occasion to speak to someone from France or a Francophone country, I speak French. And I go over to Paris as often as I possibly can, specifically with the point of studying it, because I just go to the l'Alliance Française there, and I take a week or two course just to continue the practice.
And that skill was able to help you get a fabulous assignment as the legate for Rabat, Morocco.
That's true, Jerry. It was very, very exciting, and I really enjoyed working there in Morocco.
Well, before we get to that, let us know a little bit more about you. When you joined the FBI, and really why you joined the FBI?
Well, I joined the FBI because I was in a job that was not exciting. And a close family friend suggested that I become an FBI agent. You work independently and you build your cases, and plus it's also a way to provide public service. And I'm a military brat. My father was in the Air Force, and we lived in Germany, so that was an overseas travel there early on. And I was in Portland, Oregon at the time, and went to the FBI office, and here I am, or here I was.
Yeah, that's what I was saying about our backgrounds are so similar. Same thing for me. I was a military brat. My father was in the Air Force. We actually lived in England, Germany, France, and Morocco.
Wow.
Yeah, I was a baby when he was assigned to Morocco, but that's why I just find, what you've done in the Bureau so fascinating. So why don't we get into it? So you were the legate. You were in charge of the Rabat, Morocco office. How did you get that assignment?
A few years earlier, probably around 1998, I was the French interpreter for the Office of International Affairs when the foreign minister of Morocco, Rabat, Morocco, came to visit, and there were conversations about opening up a legal attaché office in Rabat, which was at the time being handled out of Paris, France, the legal attaché office there. It was decided to open up an office in Rabat because Northern Africa, it was just really a lot of work that Paris was not able to handle effectively. After that meeting, the government agreed, and then I was asked to draft a letter documenting the conversation we had and actually translate it into French for Director Louis Free. And I drafted the letter, sent it to him, and he made one small correction. And after that, I didn't hear anything or know anything about the process of what was going on. And I happened to be in Paris, actually working as a pre-detail for one of the director's visits there. And we had some downtime at the legal attaché office, and I was just perusing the FBI site, and I saw that the posting and the job advertised for the new office. So they were looking for a legal attaché as well as an assistant legal attaché. And I put in for the legal attaché, and that was the only one I put in for, because my friends were saying, well, why don't you put in for both just in case you don't get the legal attaché? And I said, no, I only want the legal attaché job. And I met all the qualifications in the write-up. They announced that I'd become a legal attaché.
So I take it that Morocco is a French-speaking country.
Yes, the official language is French, but also they, of course, their native tongue is Arabic and their Moroccan dialect, but they also know the modern standard dialect, and I did study a little bit Arabic so I could establish rapport and make connections, in their mother tongue, before we conducted business.
Okay, all right. So what kind of proficiency level would you say you have in Arabic?
A limited proficiency, but at the time I was able to, have a basic conversation about family and how are you doing, thank you, yes, I'll have more tea, or those type of,
right.
Limited. But I was not able to actually discuss business in the Arabic language. However, that's where, my French language ability came in.
Tell us, what does it take to set up and establish an FBI office in Morocco? That to me just sounds like such a difficult thing to do because you've got to make all these connections and establish all these relationships.
Exactly. This was a difficult situation because the embassy had to move some of their workers from a prime location in the embassy And I had to rely on my connections back at headquarters in that Office of International Affairs Department. They had the plans, construction plans, but just getting the materials there and just making constant calls. So a lot of persistence, a lot of patience, and finally, they built out the space, brought in the furniture. And meantime, my office assistant and the ALAT, the assistant legal attaché, we were working in temporary space in the embassy.
And are most legats housed in an embassy?
The embassy? Yes, yes.
Okay.
Because you're part of the embassy, country team, and you have weekly meetings where everybody that's assigned to the embassy discuss what they're doing, make requests, and you just give update information to the ambassador and the DCM, which is second in command after the ambassador, and then there's all these other State Department positions, and so everybody gets together in the conference room, and we go around and we talk about what each agency, what we're doing.
All right, so I know that you're actually assigned in Rabat, Morocco, but I take it that legat covers a number of other countries.
Oh, yes. I was responsible for Algeria, Mauritania, Tunisia, and Mali, and I made visits to those locations to establish relationships and let them know what is our area of responsibility and how we could work together, what kind of cases we were working on, as well as establishing relationship with the embassy staff.
What year is this, or years is this?
2004 to 2005.
Okay, so I would imagine, just having spoken to other agents, that a lot of the cases, a lot of the issues that you're handling as a legat there have a nexus or some connection to terrorism cases.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
Can you tell us a little bit more about that? What kind of things would come in and what would you need to do?
All right. So let's say, for example, New York, if they have a case that they're working on, they have a lead or someone that needs to be interviewed who has a connection to, Northern Africa, who lives in Northern Africa. They send that request to us, and we coordinate with the appropriate U.S. embassy staff, as well as making arrangements with the local law enforcement community, the appropriate individuals, to conduct the interview or cover what we call a lead. And then we also, if there were some agents in various offices in the United States and they want to make a visit to a country in Northern Africa, we would arrange that travel as well as sit in on the interviews, make connections and introductions to the local law enforcement entities with whom we're working.
So you're basically the FBI in Morocco.
Absolutely.
You're the person that everybody needs to come to if they have a matter that deals with or relates to the FBI.
Absolutely, yes.
Well, can you think of an exciting case or an investigation that you had to work on while you were there?
Let me think. For me, every day being there was exciting, but something that really, really stepped out was a case where we wanted to interview someone for the FBI, and we provided a particular name to this law enforcement agency. They were well aware of this individual, and we were able to intercept this person or have this person intercepted as they were heading out of the country. We needed to talk to this person before they left. And because of all the coordination and everyone who I had worked with knew me, and so they were able to cut some corners and get some things done and get us to do this interview that we needed. That's all I can say about it, but it was exciting of how establishing the relationships with the individuals there, so when I needed to call on something right away, they were able to respond because they knew me, and then took my word that, I was going to follow up and follow, whatever other procedures that they needed. But in this heat of the moment, we needed to talk to this person before they left the country.
Well, it certainly sounds that you were able to use your French skills when you were a legat in Rabat. What other assignments did you have that allowed you to use your French? I
first started really using my French language ability when I was in the Chicago division. No, I want to say even before that. I went to Rwanda on a small team. The Department of State was looking for some French speakers, and the FBI had me on a list, and I was at the Chicago division at the time, And I received a call on a Wednesday. My boss agreed to have me go, and on Friday I was in Paris meeting two individuals from the Department of State. There was an Army officer as well as an assistant prosecutor from one of the DOJ offices. And our responsibility was to substantiate war crimes and human rights violations in Rwanda in the 1994 mass killings there. And from Paris, we went to Geneva, and I was able to speak French in the United Nations there. It was most exciting because that was one of my dreams, was to be at the United Nations, the headquarters in Geneva, and so that was exciting. And then we received our mandate. Then we went to Rwanda, and we were there for about 3 weeks. And our whole responsibility was to get eyewitness testimony to substantiate, like I said, human rights violations and genocide. And one of our first interviews, I'll be very, very brief on this. Our first interview was conducted I led the interview in French, and then I interpreted actually to my partner who did not speak French. And we were in this house. They invited us in, and I remember looking at this beautiful piece of furniture, all like mahogany wood, and it was such a huge piece, and I found myself my mind wandering a bit, and I'm wondering how they got that piece of furniture in this hut. And so I surmised that they had to probably build this hut around this piece of furniture and how beautiful it was. And it was getting nighttime. It's getting darker and darker and darker, and I'm taking notes, and I'm interpreting and getting information. And I kept thinking, when are they going to turn on the lights? When are they going to turn on the lights? So I'm sitting on this little stool on this dirt floor, and finally somebody says, oh, do we have enough kerosene to get the lights going? And at that moment, I'm like, wow. Not that I take things that, comforts that we have here at home, I don't take it for granted. However, it just made me think about the fact that, at home we just flip a light switch when we don't have lights, but just to think of that they have to look for kerosene. But they were the most gracious people and wanted to provide the information to help with the investigation.
And so these were witnesses of genocide. They saw people being killed and being
their families,
mutilated.
Yeah, their family members, their friends, and they're running to the safe haven places they thought were safe havens in the churches, mass genocide, and it was very disturbing. And part of our responsibility as well was to document some of the mass graves that were all over the place. And so we photographed, you could just still see at that time just skeletons just laying around, or half decomposed bodies with the stuff eating at the bodies and
the maggots. So these mutilated bodies were just laying out in the street. They weren't even buried.
No, they were just laying all over the place. It's like where they were macheted down is where they were. And by the time we got there, there was nothing in the country that they were cleaning up the bodies and everything. It was an interesting experience, and I also had a guard from the British military, and he was assigned to the UN, and so he would take me around different places. And I recall we were in one area, and I'm photographing the field and the bodies and everything. And Mick is his name. He said, Denise, there's a Rwandan warlord coming over the hill, and he's very angry. And he said, you have to use as many French curse words as you can and make sure he goes away because, if not, then we're in trouble. So I had borrowed a weapon from, the Air Force investigator had lent me a weapon.
Explain that to everyone because, you're an FBI agent. We all carry our weapons. We're all trained. With weapons and carry them on a daily basis. But you don't have your weapon with you when you were in Rwanda?
No, I was not part of a SWAT team or anything, and so street agents, you can carry in the United States, but you can't carry overseas. And I knew that I would probably be in some dangerous situations, and so that's where I made arrangements with one of the Air Force investigators to borrow a weapon from him. And also, when I was in Rabat, I was not allowed to bring my weapon over there. It remained in a safe at Quantico, in a gun safe at Quantico, Virginia, while I was over there.
I think that's pretty interesting because, we see TV shows and movies, and you've got, FBI agents overseas doing investigations, which, that's also not legitimate. It's kind of a misconception, but they definitely are shooting and, and gun battles with people overseas. And that just doesn't sound like that really happens either.
No, from my experience, no. I had to. It was a bit of getting used to not having my weapon, wearing it daily when I was over there. That was one of the difficulties but I made the adjustment, of course. But the protection for you overseas is through the embassy as well as the local government there.
Was there another situation where you were able to use your French in war crime situation?
Well, not exactly a war crime situation, but in Haiti, there was a political assassination of a very vocal woman against Aristide's government. And I was still assigned to Chicago Division then, but the Miami Division was responsible for leading an investigation based on the request of the Haitian government as to what happened and to help solve the killings. And so the FBI once again saw that my name, I had a rating that allowed me to be able to meet this obligation for the Miami Division is to go over to Haiti and be an interpreter. Although the Haitians speak I forget the term of it, but they have their own, dialect, I was able to use my French to conduct various investigations as to what they saw. What happened was a bunch of individuals in broad daylight blocked the traffic, and then they jumped out of some vehicles and shot this woman and her client in broad daylight. They got away, and at this time, the U.S. government had the military there, and we stayed in a warehouse, all the individuals, working on the case. And then I was also asked to do an undercover assignment, was to sit in one of the bars that was frequented by one of the suspects and wait for this person to come and also to have a conversation with this person in French. And I waited for hours and I had, the wire on, and I also had one of the SWAT team members, scoping me and making sure that I was safe. I mean, I felt the safest there because I knew that they were locked on me, and I had my earpiece. The guy just never showed up after about 4 hours of sitting there. But I did make small talk and, fit in, speaking French, at in this bar area. So that was an interesting part of that assignment as well. So although I went there initially to be an interpreter for this investigation, they saw that they needed my French language ability to do a mini undercover assignment. And so
the FBI is so cool when it comes to those type of opportunities.
Flexibility, yeah.
You also talked to me about using your French skills in meetings with FBI Director Louis Freeh. Yes.
There were frequent conversations. We know they had French visitors come in, and since I was assigned to headquarters there as a supervisory special agent, I would get the call and, at the moment's notice, and I would just ask, okay, what's the gist of the conversation? Most of these were visits, law enforcement visits, wanting to stop by and visit, the FBI. And I also supported investigations, like there was a group of individuals that came to Quantico, Virginia, and wanted to see the new facility that was built there. And, I gave a tour and did the, interpretation there and described what they were seeing. And I also supported FBI cases in Chicago where the Argonne laboratories, had a breach, and so, I was an interpreter for that. And then another fascinating case was a stolen violin that was just priceless. So I met what they call a luthier. That's the person that works with violins, and so I was an interpreter for that kind of that investigation. So all kinds of fun little things like that. There were a lot of French visitors that came to the Chicago Division, and that's where I really spent a lot of time being an interpreter for visits for the various assistant special agents in charge and also the special agent in charge, just sitting around and dinners and things like that. So it was very fun. I enjoyed that.
It's just so weird because, when I came in, I did have, pretty decent French skills. I lived in Switzerland for a year after college. My French has died over the 30 or more years that I haven't been using it, and I never, ever took the opportunity to use it when I was in the bureaus. But I never thought about French being Well, it wasn't. French is not one of the critical languages that the Bureau, seeks. And so I never really capitalized or used it because, I felt like, they needed Spanish speakers and Arabic speakers. And I thought French, I just assumed that most people who spoke French spoke English. And so the language skill wasn't really needed. So, I'm just fascinated by what you were able to do with your French skills. I do want to touch on one more thing before we go to the assignment that you had in the BAU, and that's that you also you were deployed for a number of terrorist attacks on U.S. government facilities overseas. Tell me about that.
Yes, I believe it was in 1998, I guess, the embassy in Nairobi, Kenya was attacked. And I was deployed there. And one of my responsibilities, because there was information that one of the main perpetrators of the bombing lived in the Comoros Islands. And that's where, the United States did not have any type of State Department recognition there.
Where's the Comoros Islands?
Right off the coast of near South Africa, on the southern part of Africa. There's 4 islands, and they were French-owned at the time. So Mayotte, one of the smaller ones, is still attached to France, but the other ones are independent. And the Comoros, Grand Comore is what it was called, and they had their independence. However, their main language is French. And so I, because of my knowledge of the French legal system, I was able to work with the prosecutor and get information. And we set up interviews with the local law enforcement for like what we call a mail cover, and then we wanted to do some wiretapping, and we did a few things to try to find this individual, and it was very interesting because I'm also a lawyer, and having that knowledge.
Oh, we missed that.
Yeah, I came in under the law program, for the FBI, and as a lawyer, working with the French prosecutor there, it made things much easier because I understood the system and how their evidentiary system worked, based on the Napoleonic law and these type of things. And so we established a relationship with them and met with some high-level governmental officials. It just so happened that right before we came, the perpetrator had left. He had his family there, and we were, watching the family, doing surveillance and things like that, but he never reached out to them. I think we were there for about a month, and then we left. And the Comoros is a beautiful, beautiful island, and they were the only diplomatic presence there was Italy and China. It was kind of interesting there. So we flew back to Kenya, with the evidence and stuff that we needed, and we processed that and sent that to the New York office because they were the lead office on that case. And I also I was a supervisor in New York on a squad, and we worked foreign counterintelligence. And I always say that I really can't say what we did, but we had a great time. There was great work there in New York.
That's secret stuff.
Yes.
Top secret that you can't even tell other FBI agents about what you did.
Exactly. Well, we just had a lot of fun, and it was a young squad, and the whole idea, young agents want to, break the doors down, and they want to see results of their work, which with foreign counterintelligence, FCI, you don't see that. You don't get that immediate verification or substantiation that what you're doing is making a difference. However, we were able to do a few things that made the work interesting. And so we had a lot of fun there. But while I was there, I was deployed to Yemen for help with the investigation of the USS Cole. My responsibility was to support, and I was in Aden before I went to Sana'a, and my responsibility was to support the investigative efforts while we sent stuff to New York for processing. And there were probably at any one time...
What, evidence?
Yes, evidence and interviews and that type of stuff.
Okay.
Then I became the on-site commander for 90 days. I was just the only one there, making sure of the safety of the agents and the SWAT team individuals. And we still processed information and interviews. And it was particularly interesting because, the Yemeni government officials were like, women in Yemen don't even pick up the telephone. And, I didn't take that personally. When I went to the meetings, with my colleagues, I, had my head covered, and then I wore long skirts, and I just sat in the back. And I think that it had taken a lot of the officials aback because I wasn't like inserting myself or pushing myself into, the system. And so I remember one time I'm sitting in the back, and one of the military officers said, "Hey, you in the back." And I was being a little mischievous, so I just kind of looked around like, "Who are you talking to me?" And he goes, "Do you have anything to say?" And so I didn't even look him in the face. I looked at my colleagues and I said, "No, my colleagues already presented to you what I needed to say." It was out of respect. It was a show of respect on my part because I just knew that I didn't want to create any waves, and I just wanted to follow their culture. And one interesting thing is they wanted to have a team of individuals come here to the United States and talk to some of the individuals that were on the coal of the ship. And when the Yemenis, a team of six wanted to come here to the United States to interview individuals on the who were on the USS Cole at that time. And I said, "Well, there are women on that ship, and you'd have to interview women." And, they kind of looked, and it's like, "Oh, well, we understand that, but we'll be in the United States, and so we'll do what's appropriate in the United States, and we'll talk to everybody that was on the ship." I was still being culturally aware and just getting them advance notice that it's not going to be like in Yemen. You do have women here in the United States who, work alongside the men, and, that they would be part of the interview team as well. So having studied a little bit of Arabic language, I was able to establish a little rapport by just, small, basic conversation. And I just used that mainly to establish the rapport and let them know that I tried to, speak their language and that I valued, their language and their culture.
And it was after those assignments that you went over to the BAU.
I was supervisor in New York at that time, and then I went to Rabat, Morocco, and then I came back to work at the BAUs.
Everybody's heard of the BAU, the Behavioral Analysis Unit. You actually were a supervisory special agent in that unit in the Violent Criminal Apprehension Program?
Yes. And I had 8 crime analysts work with me on my team, and we worked very closely with the other BAU units. And our responsibility with the Violent Criminal Apprehension Program, we had a database where all the law enforcement agencies, local, would submit their cases to us, the unsolved homicides, unsolved sexual assault cases, and unidentified human remains cases. And we would put all this information in the database and look for matches and provide leads to local law enforcement. And one of the most fascinating cases that I'll tell you about was, and this is one of the crime analysts who thought outside of the box. This is a little graphic. There was a woman who lived in Las Vegas who was working for a strip club, and she had been attacked, and her body was separated. And we found in the database a case where a leg was found off of some highway in another state. Well,
we can be graphic. This is true crime podcast, and most of the listeners, can handle a little bit of blood and gore. So when you say she was separated, do you mean that they cut off her limbs?
Yes, they cut off her limbs. Yes. Okay. Thank you, Terry, for letting me know how far to go. Yes. They separated her limbs, and a leg was found in another state. And the analyst who found these separated parts, and there were several leads that she submitted in this report, but there was one that she thought was particular, and she highly recommended that this leg probably belonged to the torso that was found because there was a unique tattoo that looked like it fit part of the other piece that was found, and also the manicure or the pedicure had some rhinestones, on the toes. So this analyst identified this leg as the connecting part to the torso that was found, and it ended up being the case. So the DNA and all of that. So she made a good match through her report, and that was the first lead out of the 3 that she identified that she recommended that the law enforcement agency follow first.
So I guess the rhinestones, nail polish kind of made her think about somebody who might have worked in, a strip club. Not that everybody who wears rhinestone toenail polish, is a stripper.
Right.
But, well, let me ask you this, because, we went from you speaking French and now all of a sudden you're dealing in the behavioral analysis unit, with violent crime, and I take it your French skills aren't being used at all in that assignment.
No, they were not, although I still continued my studies. And, in fact, I was taking courses at the l'Alliance Française in Washington, D.C. in the evenings. So this was a skill that I always wanted to keep up. I take that back, because we did have a liaison relationship with Canada, and they had a by-class system that was a violent criminal system where they took cases and stuff. And so we did do some liaisoning with them, and on those occasions I was able to speak French. And they also had a newsletter that was in French and English. And when I would read the newsletter, I would see, maybe the French had more details than what they did in the English. And then I provided that information to, my team of analysts. So, I did use French a little bit.
Okay, so their violent crime program was called VICLASS, and ours is called VICAP?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Cool. And how long were you in that position?
I was there from 2005 to, I believe it was 2011. I was there 6 years, about 6 years.
Okay. And this is also that unit where the profilers are, and you always hear about profilers and serial killers, and so you're working hand in hand. When they're developing their profile, it sounds like they're getting a lot of their information from your team or a team like yours. Yes,
absolutely. Because we would provide, we had these round table discussions, and then of course the crime analysts would put their opinions and provide information on the leads that they generated as possibilities. And another particular case that comes to mind is in New York and New Jersey. There was one guy who was killing his victims in New Jersey, but he would pick them up in New York. And there was this pattern that one of the crime analysts found, doing an analysis of the times, the pickups, and the way the guy cleaned the sites, and after he molested the women and killed them. And one woman was able to escape. And the pattern identified this person as the perpetrator of the crimes. And that was one of the crime analysts that worked with me who identified that, and behavioral analysis unit substantiated the characteristics of the individual that we first identified. So that was a great example of working together as well.
I guess this is what's so fascinating about the FBI, and that, people listening can really understand, is how many different positions and assignments and roles that, an agent can have during her career. I mean,
absolutely.
Because you had another unique assignment after this assignment. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, the FBI had started the leadership development program, and they were wanting to change our culture from one of management to one of leadership.
Could you explain that?
Yes, I was very, very interested in leadership, and there was nothing that was across the board with a common language and a common way to look at leadership in the FBI. And it was also to help individuals understand the leadership competencies that were required in order to apply for certain leadership positions in the FBI. And I learned, and I became a master facilitator as well, because we had the responsibility of training 4,500 plus mid-managers and senior managers, and then some executives, on what does leadership look like in the FBI. And there was a series of topics about developing others, leading others, having difficult conversations, team building, and through a scenario, that was how the training was done. And it was just very, very interesting. And then there was also some coaching from another company that the participants just really, really valued. It was just great to see how each class came through, because each class had about 40 individuals, and it was just very, very interesting getting the buy-in and the participation of, the participants in the program.
What would you say is the difference between, as far as the FBI is concerned, being a manager and being a leader?
Well, that was a major discussion, and for me, and what we talked about is a leader inspires others to want to do more, and a manager is making sure certain functions are being checked off. And leadership and being a leader has more of you working together as a team, and you do what you ask of your team, whereas a manager stands and watches the team do the work. So those are some of the differences that we discussed in the program.
That's important for the FBI because, and I've talked about this on the podcast before. In the FBI, agents are responsible for their own cases, and
right.
For the most part, nobody's standing over them, watching,
right.
If they're doing what they're supposed to do. You have a file review every 90 days, so 3 months go by before anybody really, takes a look at what you're doing, and you're expected to have accomplished a lot during that period of time. So we don't need a manager in the FBI. We do need a leader.
Absolutely. Yes, that's true, Jerry.
When you join the FBI, you really have no idea where your career would take you. So was that your last assignment in the FBI, that leadership development program?
Yes, that was my last assignment, and I knew that my retirement was coming up soon because, as you probably have said on your show, the FBI agents can't work past a certain age, and I knew that that was coming up for me. I was, readying myself, and they asked me to stay for a year. However, I'm the kind of person, when that door is saying it's to close, I didn't feel like it would be in my best interest to continue. Because, I had prepped my mind and was ready to go. I have had a wonderful, enjoyable career. I met lots of wonderful people who helped my career be very successful. And I just can't say enough about all the support that I had, throughout my career from all the people that I met. And I just knew that it was time to go. It was time to go. So
you were in the FBI for over 28 years.
Yeah, 28 years, 11 months.
We're going to call it.
Made it.
We're going to call it 29.
Okay, that's what my friends say. Hey, we want to just call it 29. I said, okay.
Enough, c'est juste.
Tu te rappelles beaucoup de Français. You remember a lot of French.
I got my numbers. Okay, so Denise, what are you doing now?
Right now, I'm the president of Mind Spring Metro DC. We are a leadership development consulting firm. And also we offer executive and professional and personal coaching. We have gone through the Coaches Training Institute, so we're certified professional coaches. I have a wide range of clients from the federal government to nonprofits to commercial organizations. I'm building on the leadership development skills that I learned in the FBI, and that's what developed my passion. And I love being in front of the classroom, being a facilitator for adult learners. It's very important that they actually are able to use the concepts or the information that they're learning on the spot, so they can take it with them when they walk out of the training room. I'm also studying a little bit more about how the brain works and some neuroscience techniques and tools to help people make the change that they want, the lasting change.
That sounds like your last assignment in the Bureau was like a spring to this new position or this new business of yours.
That is correct, Jerry. Yeah, because I had that passion, and I said, how am I going to take that? And because initially I was going to just retire and move to Paris and be a Paris bum and just enjoy the culture. Then when I had the bug and the passion from leadership development training from the FBI, then I was like, let me reconsider. So my Paris apartment and just doing nothing will come a little bit later.
The company, again, is Mind Spring Metro DC Incorporated,
yes.
And you're based in Alexandria, Virginia.
Yes.
All right, I'll put a link to that in this episode's show notes.
Okay, that would be great.
All right,
Appreciate it.
so we're just about winding up now, so I do want to give you the opportunity to wrap everything up about your FBI career. What would you like to say?
I'd like to say and emphasize, what you said, Jerry, about, the FBI being an organization where one can have a career that can take you in many different areas, independence and persistence, and learn different things, meet different people, travel different places, and enjoy what you're doing.
And that's the end of the interview. As always, back at jerrywilliams.com, you'll find photos of Denise Miner, a link to an FBI overview of the Legal Attaché or LEGAT program, and as I mentioned before, I also share a link to an FBI overview about non-agent positions in the FBI where language skills can be used as a language analyst or a contract linguist. If you enjoyed the interview, I hope you share it with your family, friends, and associates. I make it easy for you. At the bottom of the episode show notes, you'll find all of the social media share buttons. And while you're visiting jerrywilliams.com, I want to invite you to subscribe to the FBI Retired Case File Review newsletter. I send one out once a month to make it easy for you to review the podcast show notes and book recommendations from the previous month's episodes. I also keep you up to date on the FBI in books, TV, and movies, and update you on my author journey. Please don't hesitate to connect with me if you have any questions or you just want to say hello. My crime fiction recommendation this week is My Sister's Grave by Robert Dugoni. This is the first book in his 5-book series featuring Tracy Crosswhite, a homicide detective with the Seattle Police Department. Tracy's life is dedicated to tracking down killers, but the one murder she continues to try to solve is that of her sister, who was abducted over 20 years ago. At the start of the novel, Tracy's sister, Sarah Crosswhite's, remains are finally discovered, buried in a wooded area. Someone had been arrested, convicted, and jailed for Sarah's murder, but Tracy's not sure that they got the right killer. And with this new evidence, Tracy believes that she will finally be able to solve this case and convict the true killer. I am partial to a good police procedural, and My Sister's Grave is exactly that, a compelling, character-driven police procedural. I loved it, and I know I will continue to read the rest of the books in the series. And so, my crime recommendation for this week is My Sister's Grave by Robert Dugoni. And while you're picking up My Sister's Grave on Amazon, please consider checking out my crime novel, my police procedural, Pay to Play, about a female FBI agent investigating corruption in the Philadelphia strip club industry. This episode was sponsored by FBIRetired.com, the only online directory made available to the general public featuring retired FBI agents and analysts interested in showcasing their skills to secure business opportunities. I want to thank you for listening, and I hope you come back again for another episode of FBI Retired Case File Review with Jerry Williams. Thank you.